The forest thought it had seen darkness, but something far older has awakened. Velmo's energy trembles, warning him of a power rising beneath the earth, one that was never meant to return. Whatever is coming, it's already too late to stop it. Velmo stood on the cliff, staring toward the distant mountains as the memory of the rising blue stone flickered in his mind. The forest's breathing had changed. The wind had not returned. The leaves remained unnaturally still. Everything felt suspended. It was as if the awakening of the giant shadow behind the mountains had silenced the heart of the entire forest. The blue glow on Velmo's shell pulsed again, this time with a nervous rhythm, as if warning him of something near. The deep rumble coming from below grew stronger. It was the closest he had felt it since the stone awakened. As Velmo focused, he noticed shadows in certain parts of the forest moving on their own. They shifted even without light, as if they were breathing. A chill ran through him. The darkness was no longer just an energy. It was walking toward him. After noticing the shadows moving on their own, Velmo focused on the ground beneath him. The soil trembled lightly, as if something deep below was preparing to rise. The rumble had once come from far away, but now it had shifted direction. It was heading straight toward Velmo's position. He increased his blue glow slightly, and the vibrations spread through the air like thin ripples. Normally, this light calmed the forest, but today, the opposite happened. The dark stains on the tree trunks suddenly expanded. It felt as if Velmo's light had made the approaching darkness react even faster. Velmo stepped back. His inner energy was trying to protect him, yet something else was clear. The entity had sensed Velmo's awakening, and it was no longer hiding. As Velmo stepped deeper into the forest, he noticed the light around him slowly fading. Normally, the gaps between the trees filtered in soft daylight, but now those spaces were closing up like a gray curtain. It felt as if the forest was rejecting light itself and welcoming the darkness. Velmo increased the blue glow on his shell. For a brief moment, the brightness illuminated the surroundings, but an unseen force immediately pushed the light back. Velmo stepped away in shock. It was the first time he had ever seen his own light suppressed. The darkness wasn't just advancing, it was responding with intent. A faint rustle echoed through the shadows. Not footsteps, but the sound of a massive body brushing through the forest. Velmo's heartbeat quickened. The darkness wasn't just nearby anymore, it was directly ahead. As Velmo moved a few steps further, the rhythm of the vibrations beneath the ground changed. This time, the rumble wasn't just approaching, it was calling him. The blue lines on his shell flickered on their own, as if reacting to a language he didn't understand. A dark corridor formed between the trees. The shadows slid aside, almost as if they were clearing a path for Velmo. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Velmo sensed that the darkness wasn't only a threat, it was attempting to communicate. But whatever message it carried, it wasn't friendly. In the shadows, two faint glowing points, toward him, almost like eyes, appeared for a moment before vanishing. Velmo didn't step back. He felt he had to answer this call, because the darkness was no longer just a stranger. It had a purpose for him. As Velmo approached the dark corridor, he noticed the shadows around him trembling softly. The trembling wasn't caused by wind. It came from the energy hidden within. Even the tree trunks seemed to breathe subtly, inhaling and exhaling with the shifting darkness. The blue glow from Velmo's shell flickered in sync with the trembling. The brighter his light grew, the more the shadows retreated. But then they returned twice as heavy. It felt as though the darkness was analyzing Velmo's strength, testing his limits. When Velmo focused, he heard a faint whisper. Not a word, yet unmistakable in meaning. Come. Velmo swallowed hard. This darkness wasn't just calling him, it wanted him. Steps slowed,
a dark pressure
but he didn't
pulse
stop,
pushes inward,
because this encounter was inevitable. As Velmo moved deeper into the shadowed corridor, the vibration beneath the soil became clearer. It was no longer a simple rumble, it was a breath. With each pulse, the earth swelled gently before sinking again, as if a massive creature lay buried beneath the forest floor. The blue glow on Velmo's shell began flickering in the same rhythm as the breath. The forest wasn't reacting to Velmo anymore. It was responding to whatever hid underground. For a moment, Velmo felt his own energy being smothered. His blue light was being forced into the rhythm of the darkness. This control didn't belong to him. It belonged to the entity below. Then a deep cracking sound echoed from the depths. Velmo's eyes widened. Something enormous was preparing to rise. Right in front of Velmo, a thin line appeared on the surface of the soil. At first, it looked like a simple crack, but within seconds it expanded, branching out like a web. Shadows spiraled around the widening fracture, swallowing every trace of light. Velmo wanted to step back, but the blue energy inside his shell pushed him forward, as if his destiny was waiting right here. As the crack widened, a dark, heatless yet burning mist rose from the depths. It behaved like a physical fog, recoiling when it touched Velmo's blue glow, then returning twice as fiercely. Suddenly, a heavy breath echoed from within the opening. The owner of that breath was no longer hiding. Velmo's knees weakened. The creature was truly awakening. As the crack continued to spread, Velmo could clearly feel the movement of the dark mass beneath the surface. The faint vibration rising from the opening was no longer just a warning. It was the motion of a colossal body shifting underground. Even the roots of the trees trembled as if frightened, their trunks bending slightly. When Velmo intensified the blue glow from his shell, the darkness recoiled, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it seemed to study him, analyzing his power. Then, at the center of the crack, a dense cluster of swirling shadows gathered, forming the outline of an immense shape. Its details were impossible to fully see, yet its movement was the clearest sign that something was approaching. The rumble from below grew more rhythmic. This was no longer breathing. It was an awakening. Velmo stepped back, but he couldn't tear his gaze away from the emerging form. Whatever it was, it would reach the surface very soon. As the shadows within the crack spun faster, the pressure rising from the depths intensified. Velmo could feel that the massive entity buried below was now fully awake. With every breath it took, the ground rose slightly and then collapsed with overwhelming force. The motion was strong enough to throw Velmo off balance. The blue glow on his shell flickered uncontrollably, giving him strength while simultaneously urging him to retreat. When the shadows began crawling upward along the edges of the fracture, Velmo's throat tightened. These were not just patches of darkness. They carried a living, conscious energy, one that felt unmistakably hostile. Moments later, two massive shapes emerged from within the crack, resembling shoulders pushing toward the surface. The form was unlike anything Velmo had ever seen. Its sheer weight made it feel as though the forest itself struggled to breathe. Velmo instinctively stepped back. A confrontation was now unavoidable. crack widened with a thunderous eruption, as if the very heart of the earth had been torn open. Dirt blasted upward, tree roots snapped, and a deep roar echoed from the depths of the forest. Through the cloud of dust, Velmo watched the rising mass of darkness, and every part of his body trembled involuntarily. Shadows swirled around the creature like living armor, clinging to its form as it ascended. First, massive shoulders emerged, broad and layered with shifting darkness, as if molded from nightmares. Then its torso rose. Its shape was impossible to fully define, yet every movement forced the forest into silent fear. Finally, its head surfaced, splitting the darkness around it. The creature had no face, but within the void, two crimson eyes ignited, piercing through Velmo's core. They didn't feel like the eyes of a beast. They felt like the consciousness of an ancient curse. The blue light on Velmo's shell tried to shine, but the creature's aura smothered it with trembling force. The creature recognized Velmo. The reason for the rumbling breath was that it had finally found what it was searching for. It took one heavy step. The ground collapsed. Velmo didn't retreat. This wasn't just an encounter. It was the beginning of a war, and the chapter cut to black. The darkness has awakened, and what Velmo saw tonight was only the beginning. Beyond the valley, a power older than the forest itself is rising, and in the next chapter, the real battle begins.